Okay, so just want to start by saying that we conceptualized the tool in 2015 when we realized that, of course, the older population is growing, people are living longer, and then there is a need for the home delivered meal, which is rising. This is not proportionally increasing with funding that's available for this program. And so we also realized at the time that waiting list for the home delivered meal was increasing. And so we decided to develop a prioritization tool, so a tool that this program specifically can use, the home delivered meal program can use in order to prioritize who gets on the program. And that is very similar to the WIC program, who also has a prioritization for who gets on the program, because the number of people interested in participating is higher than the funding. So based on that, we started thinking about what is need for a meal and who are the most needy and how to determine that. And keeping in mind that the purpose of the nutrition program is to decrease food insecurity and hunger, promote socialization, and promote health and well-being, and that the nutrition program is not meant really necessarily to identify who is malnourished and to treat malnutrition, but of course in the process, people who call might be malnourished. So so to determine who is the most needy, we decided to look at the risk factors that are part of the nutrition screening initiative, which this program still uses and then collects that information, and also some risk factors that are acknowledged and known in the literature to lead to poor nutrition. And so in looking at what those risk factors in terms of physiology, having 2+ chronic diseases, inability to shop and cook, recently hospital discharged, involuntary weight loss, cognition, oral health can all lead to poor dietary intake. And so is economic issues and risk factors and psychological risk factors like depression, living alone. But then we started thinking, okay, but the point is that this program delivers a meal or 3 meals a day. And so the question is, what are these meals actually going to help them fulfill that need? So having 2+ chronic diseases is an issue, but it's having a meal delivered may not necessarily be what the issue is, what the need is. The need might be to have more of seeing a doctor or some other things. The same thing for recently hospital discharge. If people are hospital discharged, they might be able to prepare meals, they might be able to have somebody shop for them, but if they can't shop or cook, that's what would lead to malnutrition and food insecurity. So we went through all of these risk factors and determined that in the final analysis, if people are unable to shop or cook, and if they are food insecure, these are the major risk factors that we want to concentrate on. And so that's what we did. We developed a tool, and we determined that need depends on the ability to obtain groceries and the ability to prepare hot meals, ability to afford food, and is help available in case they can't do this? Is there a help that is consistent that can provide that? So we decided to combine physical, economic, and social functions using particularly those 3 risk factors. And so in 2015, we developed a collaboration between the University of Maryland and the Maryland Department of Aging, and with Judy Simon, who was pretty amazing to work with. And we obtained a grant from them. And we also formed a Maryland Prioritization Work Group, again with the Maryland Department of Aging, AAA directors from all of the different counties, excuse me, and program coordinators. We also had some graduate students who participated. And we created a standardized tools that home delivered meals can use for prioritizing if needed based on those 3 criteria. So the question is, why prioritize? And we feel like prioritization is important in case there are more people than the program can provide meals. So it is to make sure that those with the greatest needs are served. But even if there is no waiting list, which in our state, some counties did not have waiting lists or did not keep them, even if people applied and could not get on the program. But also it's a way to show funders the level of need that is served by the program. So every state, in Maryland, it's mandatory to use that tool. So all the counties collect their information, send it to the state, and they look at overall the level of need served by the program. And another reason to use this would be outreach. Like if you look at who is being reached by the program, and if it's not the highest, then maybe an outreach is needed in order to get the most vulnerable, the most underserved people in the communities. So that might be small, but basically the questionnaire that we developed takes about 1 to 5 minutes to use, to administer. So the first question, let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. So the first question is, if you have available, would you be able to use them to prepare hot meals? It's yes or no. If it is yes, they can prepare a meal, then the question goes to here to question 2. If they say no, they cannot prepare a hot meal, then we ask them, do you have reliable help with meal preparation? And if they say no, then we stop here, because we feel like if people cannot prepare meals, then regardless of anything else, they need a meal. And then we go to 2 here, where the questions are the validated tool of the food security validated tool, and it's composed of 6 questions, yes, no. And there is 1 point or 0 points. So the total here would be 0 to 6. And the questions are, you might all be familiar with that, but it's the anxiety that the food that we bought didn't last, or we couldn't afford balanced meals, and go to skip meals, go to bed hungry, or don't eat. So these are the questions that have been validated before. And then the third question is about, are you able to get groceries into your home? This is combined with this question to provide priorities. So we have priorities A, which is up there, B, C, D, and E. And if people are able to get groceries, then we combine this with a number of points for food security and determine the priority level. So just to summarize how that works, basically, if somebody can cook or has help cooking is one of the questions. If they say no, then they are priority A, highest priority. If they say yes, they have help or they can cook, but they can't get groceries, Excuse me, I'm just getting very sick. If they are able to get, they are asked if they're able to get groceries or they are economically food secure. If it's no, then they are category B, which is based mostly on ability to get groceries and being economically food insecure. In C, they're basically economically food insecure. D, they cannot obtain groceries, but they are food secure and they can cook. And finally, in the priority A, they have a yes for all of these questions. That means they can do it. So they are the best of all of them. This is A is the worst. But of course, all of them that apply for, most of them that apply for the home delivered meal are homebound and all qualify. So we have the on the other side of the questionnaire, we have the priority levels and what they are, what they mean, and then the priority level reasoning. And then basically it's if they're unable to cook or and no reliable help, then they do get, like I said earlier, a home delivered meal, and they're the top priority. And then the other categories, if there is no waiting list, then of course everybody gets a meal. But in addition to the meal, they get also recommendation for other programs that exist within the state. And but before I go to an example of that, in the rest of the other side of the questionnaire is an explanation of who should use this tool, how it should be used, and how are the results useful, and a little bit of information on that. But in terms of, let me see. So we also have a training manual that goes with that. But in the training manual, we give an example of a referral table for people who either are in B, C, D, or E, even A, if they have other barriers like food and nutrition, housing, transportation, financial, having difficulty with utilities or personal safety, then we recommend that every county or state write down all of the different potential services that are available to them. And we recommend, like, just if they want to apply, for example, assisted living or ramp assistant or any of these things that could be a barrier to food security. And this is also another part of in the training manual is a sample report from the Maryland Department of Aging, which shows the distribution of the priorities across the whole of Maryland. Every county can do the same thing in order to look and see who are they serving. Are the majority of the people that they are serving the most needy and vulnerable of the population. So in order to find out, I think that I need to maybe make it, okay. So how did we test the screener? And so what we did is we pilot tested it, and we got AAA to volunteer to screen the applicants over the phone. And there was input online as well from the AAAs. Everybody's leaving, or am I imagining? Lauri, it looks like you and I are on here. I'm afraid the organizers are gone too. I don't know if there is a problem.
Oh,
Oh, here she is back. Okay. Okay, we saw everybody disappearing, Heather, so I didn't know if there was a problem with the, okay.
No, you're just fine.
Okay, so anyway, so in after the tool was tested online, I mean by phone, then there was a home visit by the AAAs, um, and um, and the information that was gathered is priority level appropriate, that was measured by the tool, and if not, was it too high, too low, and what additional information was this decision based on. And so we found out that of the 77 follow-up that we had, that 75% of the population actually had an agreement with the priority level. And this was published in Topics in Clinical Nutrition in 2020. And then we decided to have a larger, because that was a pilot tool, so we had a larger study and to validate the tool, and so we recruited nationwide. We got 203 homebound participants. It was during COVID, so it was a little bit difficult to recruit. And we conducted 4 phone interviews. We had a questionnaire on Qualtrics, which is an online survey software. And we had it's called Food Security Screener Expanded. And what we found out, it's in fact, it can distinguish between different priority levels. So it did identify the home delivered meal applicants who are most vulnerable, particularly in relationship to the health-related quality of life. So we looked at the relationship between people who reported the different priorities and health-related quality of life scores, the social support questions. It was also related to satisfaction with food-related life, with appetite, and with the number of coping strategies. And so we also looked to correlate and see if it was associated with the gold standard measures, again, like health-related quality of life, social support, and satisfaction with food-related life. So in terms of application, we submitted this paper for publication, and we think it was accepted based on the reviewers' comments, and we sent that back. And then for research, we have 2 other things papers that we did. One is we looked at the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, and we looked at functional food security, which is ability to shop and cook. And we looked at the food security tool, and we combined them. We looked at people who had both food insecurities, or had one of them, or had none. And we found some very interesting and very results that showed us that in fact physical food insecurity is something that we need to incorporate in looking at people's intake. And then we recently, which is an accepted paper, we developed and validated a longer questionnaire, but this is, I think, more for research than it is for nutrition programs, where we looked at 6 different physical function questions, and we were able to associate them with depression and with the healthy eating index. And that's all I was gonna say for today. So, if there are any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Sahyoun. I appreciate that. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think we'll leave questions to the end. Dr. Wright, are you ready?
Let me go ahead and share my screen. Make sure this. That's not, of course it didn't. it always is the wrong screen, right? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine.
My apologies. Are you seeing the slide,
Yes.
the slideshow?
Yes.
Okay, and is it in an advanced, right?
We're seeing the slideshow as if you're working on it, not like a presenter mode. If you want to presenter mode. Stacy, do you know?
I'm sorry, I just.
No, you're fine.
No, you're okay. You can bring it right back up, and then on that screen I can show you what to press for presenter mode. So you can go ahead and bring that PowerPoint presentation back up.
Is
there
that
you
presenter mode?
Nice.
Okay.
You got
it. Super. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
And Dr. Sahyoun, thank you so much for your presentation and your work on this. I think what we're really, what I'm going to present is we're not as far along by any means, but we're really talking about an issue that exists in identifying food security in our older adults, because what we really know as practitioners in this area is that the current tools underestimate what is going on. Just a little background about myself. I have consulted with several Meals on Wheels programs in my years as a practitioner. And then when I moved into academia, I did some outcome studies. And currently I have a program called Meals on Wings at our university's mascot is an osprey, so the wing is in relation to our mascot. But we recover food from area hospitals that was produced in excess, and we recover that food, we repurpose it into healthful meals, and then we deliver those meals to homebound seniors that are on the wait list in the Jacksonville area. And so currently we're serving over 250 homebound seniors in our area, and we just recently expanded to 2 new universities across the country, and soon to add a third, a total of 4 Meals on Wings sites. So this really became, of interest as we began looking at our seniors. When we talk about food security, the traditional definition of food security is when all times, and we're usually looking at a household level, right? They have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious foods. And there's 4 dimensions to the traditional food security definition. There's availability, access, utilization, and stability. More recently, we have started to look at the terms of nutrition security, which is then kind of expanded and is defined as a consistent access, availability, and affordability of foods and beverages that promote well-being and prevent disease. So it starts to look at more of the health component of food insecurity. And so an even newer concept is really this integration, recognizing the impact. And so moving into this whole idea of nutrition and food security. And I always think about, it's the quality of what is provided. They can have access to food, but is it the quality that promotes health and well-being? And again, is it appropriate given our population of older adults? And as I said, the current food security scales are really focused on only one dimension, and that's access, and it's mainly financial. So we could all go around and list multiple reasons why our seniors aren't able to access and utilize food and nutrition. And I think Dr. Sahyoun talked about on their priority tool, one of the biggest priorities was access to groceries. And so we know things like transportation, cognition, ability to prepare the meals. So there are so many reasons why that go far beyond finances. When we take interns out to our program, sometimes they're kind of surprised that the older adults that we're delivering meals to, well, that they have a pretty nice home or they have a car, but they can't drive that car. They can't, you know, even getting bulk foods from, say, a food pantry, they aren't able to prepare those foods. So we wanted to develop a tool that would really capture all of those dimensions, would really get a better snapshot of our older adults and their nutrition and food security level. So how we developed our tool is we really based it on the International Classification of Functioning, Disability, and Health Framework, which is ICF for short. And the ICF has many different health dimensions of health based on functioning and disability. So we really thought that functioning and disability piece was very appropriate for our older adults. So we did semi-structured interviews with older adults, and we classified them into 4 different categories. Some were low income, and they were food insecure. Another group was low income, but food secure. Another group was high income, food insecure, and then high income, food secure. I made a mistake there on my slide. So high income, food insecure, high income, food secure. So again, holding certain variables steady, income and food security, we were then able to develop themes. So we used a really kind of inductive, qualitative method to come up with really the barriers and facilitators to nutrition and food security among our older adults. And we really broke it down into, there's 5 domains. Beyond demographics, it's environmental issues, physical activity and functionality, personal participation, and then the final is body functions and structures. And so our tool, and I wish we had a great nickname for the tool, but we haven't come up with one yet, but it consists of 30 questions altogether. And so it definitely is not a quick screen yet. We hope to get to that screen as we finish validating this tool. But really, it is much more comprehensive. So we really can identify those issues, the real prevalence of food and nutrition security. Another, I think, use of this tool in the future will be based on those domains. For example, if within the environmental, if something comes up with transportation, then we can help identify other services that need to be wrapped around that older adult. So how we are validating the tool is we are giving the 30 question tool and then the 6-item traditional food security screener. And so we're comparing the validity and how we really the gold standard that it's compared to is a dietitian's assessment of nutrition and food security. So through that comprehensive assessment that the dietitian does with the older adult, they can determine if are they secure or insecure, or are they at risk. And it's really helpful for us as we're as we're further validating and proving this scale, this tool, is that we know from the dietitian. So why are they at risk for nutrition and food insecure? What are the barriers for them? Is it transportation? Is it physically not being able to stand up? And likewise, what are kind of the protectors that are in place for this older adult? Perhaps it's the family support, or that they are on Meals on Wheels that keeps them secure. So in talking with Livleen and allowing me to be on our call today, I'm just reaching out to you all to see if anyone would be interested in partnering with us. We're asking if you would be interested in maybe doing about 8 to 10 of these with an older adult that you work with. Some is great, and if you can't do 8 to 10, just a few, that all adds up. My co-PI and myself have done quite a few of these, and probably just from the ease of use now for it, it takes us no more than 15 minutes to complete the tool. And again, this isn't ultimately going to be a screener. What we want to do is have kind of like a long form that might be used in certain settings, research and maybe programming. But then from that, we want to develop a screener from this more comprehensive tool. And it's also, I think, really an opportunity for dietitians working in the field to really inform us, give us feedback on the assessment questions, what works, what doesn't, what maybe we're missing, or what was redundant. So it would be a really be very helpful if we had heard from the experts too on the usability and how dietitians find this tool. So if you would happen to be interested, I do have my contact information. But I think, Dr. Sahyoun and I are both, in agreement is that those traditional methods of identifying our older adults that have need around nutrition and food security, that these newer screening tools and assessment tools are greatly needed, so that we can provide the programming that our older adults need. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Heather. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wright. I appreciate both of you sharing this. And like I said, Livleen wishes she could be here. She was not able to today, but thank you very, very much for going through that. I'll now open it up to questions. You can unmute yourself and ask, or you can put it into the chat.
Hey everyone, this is Renee Brown. Took me a second to get off mute. Thank you so much for these presentations. It's so nice to see the work being done by Lauri, Nadine, and your teams. I have a question for Nadine. I wonder if it wouldn't be too much trouble to pull back up the third section of your assessment, or perhaps if those slides are going to be shared afterwards, I can always reference it later. But I just wanted to see that last section, number 3, if that's possible. Ah, perfect. Okay, thank you. I just missed it, so I appreciate that. And I'm looking at it right now and I can note that. Thank you so much. And then perhaps a follow-up question. Thank you for that, Nadine. Lauri, do you have a timeline? So for people in the network who would be completing these assessments for you, do you have a time when you'd really want them to be complete by? Thank you.
We still have several months that, so there would be no push when it could work within their workload and such. I know that, there are ebbs and flows and when reports and things are due. So it would really depend on the participants
Okay,
and
great.
the dietitian's timeline.
Okay. And then does it matter, two more questions briefly, if possible. Does it matter the format? So could it be over the phone, in person, or even over a video call?
I think, we've gotten so good at doing things over the phone or by video call. The assessment is the assessment. So whichever format, and I think most of us are moving towards the phone or video. So
Okay.
any format's fine.
Okay, great. And then my final question, if you may, is I know you mentioned that you guys are comparing the validity of the tool versus a dietetic assessment. If you have people in the network doing the assessment for you, do you also want them to have a dietitian do that full assessment so you can compare those results? Or are you just looking for the assessment tool?
So really so typically we're kind of asking that it be a dietitian that does that, at least that initial assessment. And that's going to really be all the questions that the dietitian needs to do their full assessment, or, even trigger some follow-up questions. So I think for that initial, if it could be the dietitian that did that, versus I know usually case managers can do them. It would be repetitive of the time for the client, because the dietitian is probably going to ask some of the similar questions.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions. Thank you to the group, and thank you
you.
Guys.
Renee, sorry, I thought that I was speaking when in fact I was muted earlier when you asked the question. But yes, thank you for your question. I also wanted to mention that besides the paper copy of the questionnaire, we have a tool which is an Excel form where you can put the information in it and it automatically calculates the outcome, the priority. We had an app that we had developed, but it was too complicated to explain to everybody, so we decided not to keep it. So we have the Excel form right now.
Okay, excellent. That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. You actually asked my question, so that was perfect. Anyone else? Questions today? And while we're waiting, I just wanted to let you all know that we will make this recording available to everyone so that those who were not able to watch, or if you would like to watch it again, you are welcome to do so.
Okay, I'll follow up with another one. Just in general, do you, Nadine, I'll punt this to you and then maybe hear Lauri's insight. Do you both have general timelines for when you hope to roll these tools more widely out to the network? Is that something that you hope to really test further and then do a launch, or is that more a soft landing? I'm just curious in your head if you have a timeline that you're looking at, and I'll punt that to Nadine first.
Actually, our tool is being used now. It finished being tested and it's out there. So Maryland uses it. I know Vermont uses it. California, some programs there, and I got contacted by a couple of other states. I'm not sure. Don't remember. I don't have the information in front of me, but so it's actually it's a complete tool that can be used anytime. And I didn't put my information out there. If you need to contact me, it's my first initial and last name, Sahyoun at UM for Maryland UMD.edu. In case anybody's interested to look at it further or to use it.
Thank you. And I'll punt it to Lauri, and then I might have one more question for you, Nadine.
Well, we certainly are not at that level. We're still finishing validation. And, I think from a network standpoint, I sincerely doubt that the network would want to take on a 30-item assessment. I think it would, I think Nadine's prioritization tool is wonderful. I wish they were using it in the programs here in Florida. But, you know, maybe one day we will have, you know, I almost look at it as, you know, the like we have the 2-item foods insecurity screener, food security screener that we use in hospitals and doctors' practices. That's what I would kind of like to eventually develop. Maybe this 30-item might be something that maybe at clinics case managers use, but or in, you know, more I really see it kind of in clinics, and then maybe having a screener that comes out of this validated tool. So we're quite a ways down, and I would never think that at this point a 30-item would be appropriate in the network.
That's completely fair. I understand that, but I appreciate the work that you're doing, because it really does. It takes that more comprehensive version to even get the screener version. So it's not lost on us at all. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And then Nadine, and I swear, guys, if you have questions, please jump in. I have one last one, I think, for Nadine. When you complete your assessment, Nadine, does your network have a triage or almost a decision tree of, based on that grade or rating that the client receives, you have an idea of how many meals they'll receive and the duration of those meals? Or is it more nuanced and up to the case manager and the home delivered meal providers to really gauge when those clients are being reassessed, how many meals they really need, and then going from there?
In terms of number of meals, no, but reassessed, we have something on reassessment where and actually it is Judy Simon used to be the director of the program in Maryland. So I was working with her, and that was one of the questions that came up with a lot of the AAAs in Maryland, like, when do you reassess? And so the recommendation, like every 6 months, you can use the tool again and say, well, you know, now, you know, and ask those same questions again. So people who were in the hospital, for example, and were released from the hospital after 6 months may be okay enough that they don't need it anymore, or so it was felt that after 6 months you reassess. But I think the number of meals was dependent more on every program and what they usually normally do. And that tool does not determine, like, make recommendation about that.
I figured you'd say that, but I wanted to ask just in case. So thank you. That's very helpful.
Hi, guys. I
There
just
you
put
go.
this in the chat. I'm just curious about, with the screening tool, or not screener, but the assessment tool for older adults, what sort of wording or phrases in other tools from your interviews did you guys find were particularly confusing or just didn't work for your older adult population? I know we use the 6-item USDA food security screener a lot at OpenHand, and for particularly our older adult clients, some of the phrases in those questions just doesn't seem to work or fit with there's like a misunderstanding sometimes. So curious what those phrases were that you guys ran into and what your adjustments or workarounds were in the assessment you developed.
Yes, so we actually did some testing with older adults, and I think there was just one question that we had to adjust. One of the questions, we added a hot meal to, are you able to prepare meals, and we added hot meal because meal has a lot of different interpretation for people. There was one other, unfortunately, I wish I had reread that paper before presenting here, because I know there was one other question that had to be changed a tiny bit by one word. But it was tested on, I think, about 10 people, just to see on one-on-one, in order to see how people reacted to the questions and how they interpreted the questions. And we did that before we administered the questionnaire. The items, the food security, the one that you say you use, the 6-item, actually was tested by a group in Atlanta, by Young-Soon Lee and her group at the time, and they validated the tool for use with older adults. So we took that from, that it is validated and used that. So we mostly also, we tested them again though, but we tested the question on preparation of meals and on grocery shopping.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Miranda, we did some tweaking because I mean, just the traditional, like in the past 12 months, have you, I mean, that it just doesn't work for most populations. And so, we have, I'm willing to share with anybody the tool that we have so you get more ideas about the exact questions. But some of the questions that we had to kind of tweak a little bit, very simple, but we had about their income level, and we had it by a year. How much do you make in a year? They go by their monthly deposit, what their Social Security is, or for some retirement. So they go by month. So we had to, that's just one example of something we changed. There was another question that we had to tweak quite a bit, and it had to do with body functions. And basically, do you ever experience incontinence that affects your ability to shop? And so that took some tweaking, because you can't just ask about incontinence, right? But really, are there times that you go to the grocery store or don't go to the grocery store because of bowel or bladder concerns? So, and then you get really creative ways of how they work around that, and it's great. You learn so much from them, right? But those were just a couple that we noticed took a little bit of extra explanation and therefore needed to be adjusted.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, and I would love to see the tool if you're able to share it with us.
Yeah.
Great questions, everyone. I know that Dr. Sahyoun, Jenny had asked if you could share your email address again. Do you want me to put that in the chat?
Sure, or I can I'll just type it
Okay.
in and send it.
That way everyone can see that. And Dr. Wright, I'm sure they want the same from you. I don't know if you have anything to share.
Yeah, I'm trying to attach it in the chat, the screening, but if I'm not able to, Heather, is it okay if I send it to you to distribute it to the group?
Yes, okay. Absolutely. Yes.
I appreciate
absolutely.
that.
Yes. Yeah, we can do that. Any other questions today?
Renee has one. Yes. So you got me thinking, Nadine. I apologize that you said this, but so now you're using the standardized tool that you guys made. Prior to that, were you using the nutrition screening initiative or the food security 6-item screener? Can you go into that? And if now that you're doing this new tool, are you just doing that tool, or are you doing it in tandem with an NSI or an FSS or a similar assessment? Thank you.
So we developed the tool, and then it's up to the AAAs and the programs to use however they see fit. So one thing about the nutrition screening initiative, the nutrition screening initiative was developed in the 80s, and it was developed because it was the first tool that ever finally made us recognize that nutrition and malnutrition are related, that nutrition is an important component for the health of people. So it was an accumulation of 10 items that were put in the nutrition screening initiative, but not all of them are. So each one separately, like oral health, for example, if somebody has problems with oral health, then there is an association with malnutrition. But if you add this to being over 80, to being all of the other drinking, alcohol, all of the other questions of the nutrition screening initiative, if you use the scale that they provide, the number, it's really not related to mortality or morbidity or anything like that, each item might be a risk factor in and of itself. So the tool itself is really not one that is very useful at this point in association. I mean, we've talked about that many times with the feds and I think it is a wonderful thing to have all of these risk factors identified, but they don't help the home delivered meal program. I think the home delivered meal program needs something that is specific to that program, that's specific related to it, that makes it useful for them on what to use and how to use it, to provide a meal. So using the food security question alone, that's like Lauri also mentioned, is that it's based on economic food security alone, and it does not take into consideration functional status of people that also can lead to food insecurity. So inability to shop or inability to cook makes it that you cannot really necessarily have healthy meals because you can't do those functions, and that is directly related to whether you need a meal or not. So even if you take oral health, which is the example I used earlier, it is an issue for older adults, but do you need a dentist or do you need a meal? These are the kinds of things we looked at when we looked at all of the risk factors and the barrier. Is it a meal that will help you get better, or do you need something else, like other kinds of services? And that's when it's useful to know what other services are available that you can recommend for people. So I think that the 6-item tool alone is not enough, in my opinion. Yeah.
I agree. Thank you.
And I don't know if everybody saw, but Dr. Wright did share the validation survey. And I think that was also shared in the email that was sent out originally. I think it was February 14th about the call itself, about this call. So if you need to refer to that as well, you can, but that is available there. Any other questions today? I know we're ending the hour, so I want to thank Dr. Wright and Dr. Sahyoun again for presenting this wonderful information. It was extremely helpful. I know that we're all eager to get our hands on these tools so that we can use them. So thank you very, very much, and I wish everyone a nice afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.